Elevate TV, advancing kingdom lifestyle.
Tushangilie Kenya, taifa letu tukufu, Kenya tunayoipenda, Kenya nchi tunayoipenda.
Twajivunia sana tukijiita wa Kenya, nchi yenye baraka, Kenya nchi yenye baraka.
We want to give you thanks. We are careful to give you thanks because we know that in your mind, in your heart, our future is bright. Lord, the plans that you have for us are still good plans. They are plans to give us a future and to give us that expected end as individuals and as a nation. And so, Lord, we pray that you will give us wisdom and insight, and you would favor us and give us, Lord, conviction and the passion to move forward and to do that which is right, that which is pleasing to you, that, Lord, we can establish the right kind of foundations even for future generations, that, Lord, the posterity of this nation, the blessing that you have ordained for Kenya shall be manifested, O Lord, in the days ahead. We thank you, Lord, for every panelist and everyone that will stand here on this platform today to speak to the nation, Lord.
All right. So we want to get right away onto the main program. We'll go on to the speeches, and let me just give you a bit of guidelines on that. Somebody has disappeared who I wanted to call here. Where's Dr. Duncan? All right, so in his absence, I'll do the honors. Now, all right, so we are live on Elevate TV, and we are live on the various social media platform, Elevate TV Kenya, Facebook page, Elevate TV in Kenya, YouTube page. We are also live on Gerard B. Talk Facebook and YouTube channels. And so please, those of you that are now joining us online, we want to welcome you to this particular celebration. This is the Kenya 2010 Constitution anniversary. This is the 11th anniversary of the Kenya 2010 Constitution. And we are joined here with a team of various stakeholders, members of the academy, members of the various institutions, experts, people that have spoken to the constitutional order in this nation. We are gathered here, and our objective is to celebrate with all of you. And as Kenyans of goodwill, we are here to celebrate this 11th anniversary of the 2010 Constitution. And so to get us underway, I'm going to invite our keynote speaker. And because I'm working in partnership with the leadership of Dr. Duncan Ojwang, I'm going to invite Dr. Duncan Ojwang, who is going to invite for us the guest. Dr. Duncan Ojwang is the Dean of the Law School at African Nazarene University. And I've had him on the GG Report show in the past. And so when we had a conversation, and I told him, please come on the show, let's talk about the current, ongoings in regard to the Constitution, the change, the BBI agenda, and all that. He told me, no, we have a big ceremony to do. We want to celebrate the Constitution. And so, Dr. Duncan, please welcome here. You are the one who started this, and you said you wanted us to do this particular celebration here in church. I am your host, and I welcome you to Live Church and your team. So feel free. We are praying for you. We are praying for your team, and we believe that that what you're doing is all to the glory of God. And especially church people would like to get into this conversation and understand what's going on. So welcome, sir. And you can speak from this platform. That camera is All right, stand here. All right, so welcome.
Good
And
morning.
You can invite for us the chief guest.
Good morning. On behalf of the live audience and those who are following online, I would like to welcome you to this day of the 11th anniversary of our Constitution, 11-year cut. I don't mind being a copycat as long as you are copying from the right cut. When he set us up as the chair of the Kenya Constitutional Implementation Commission, steered this constitution to do what it was meant to do. And that commission have given us the foundation to build on even today. And therefore, I recognize you, Judge. We have Professor PLO Lumumba, one of the scholars and lawyers who have also worked very hard. Somebody described him as a hand grenade tossed on the wall of impunity in Kenya. As you see again, I'm being a good copycat, trying to copy from the right cut. Professor Karibu. Dr. Singwe also led through this constitution on the issue of minority marginalization, represented those who are forgotten, and have worked to bring into life the equality, the social rights, and even when in the office of the presidency, in the executive office of deputy president, we know that he has kept working with the civil society, advising the government, and one hand checking that this constitution is not rendered impotent. Doc Karibu. And happy anniversary for what you have done. Justice Juma is a party leader and is one of the parties that emanates from Luoland. He has been in this for a while, and he has given us our voice when we have lost that voice by giving us a platform to stand on in the Justice and Freedom Party. Professor Muimali became a professor this week, but we all know it was long overdue. A very humble person, but powerful things come in small sizes. He's a giant. Benson is our student leader and one of our students, and I've always been inquiring to be close to PLO and to do everything we can do in terms of celebration. So I'm glad he's in town. Dr. Amala, let me introduce the Amala of those days. Not this Amala who is now in the books, but Amala of those days, to be honest, have fought for this constitution. And when you look at the preamble of the constitution saying, recognizing those who sacrificed and fought for this constitution, Doc, congratulations. You fought for this constitution. The other generation are going to protect it together with your leadership, and congratulations. Dr. Ekuru Aukot, a leader, a presidential candidate, but you know that this was the team that went through this country and did something that we never knew, that the people and the amateur were writing their own constitution. And he will remind you and he will tell you that what he penned down is not the thinking of the experts, but of Kenyans. So whenever we talk of we the people, then we know that you gave us a voice. Congratulations and karibu. Wakili is right next to them, a budding scholar, and we welcome you. On this side, Bitok, a giant on media, you are the giant. Congratulations. Faith, Mugendi, and Monica are young lawyers who believe in what law can do to change our country. And therefore, they don't address or look at law simply from client or from transactional perspective, but law as a healing profession, and that this law should actually speak. And therefore, congratulations and welcome. Dr. Linda Musumba, I don't know which part we should introduce. Let's go with the yesteryear's parts. You started the KU University, you have worked so hard, but she's able to do it in a friendly way, while on heels, while still being motherly and a friend, but again standing on the rule of law. You know, there's some who lose that smile, for example. She has a very great smile there, even as she looks at law and she's teaching law and she has mentored many. Yesterday we were talking to her about mentorship. She's also one of the people who led us as amicus to advise the court on the complex issue of BBI. And she's a great team player, I can say that without doubt. And yesterday she told us of the young people he's mentoring, the wakili behind him. And so I'm doing that on behalf of those who are following online, that we are simply representing the people. We are here to celebrate this constitution. We are not taking it for granted that we are here. And how did we get here? We know the sacrifices that each and every one of you have made. And again, I know I'm seeing the audience online are big. We just want to remind even Christians and even non-Christians, and whether you are a lawyer or not, that the Constitution is so much yours. It's not a document for lawyers. It is your contract. Know it, be intimate with it, and stand with it. All of it. Protect it. You know that we are in a time that one of the things the Constitution was trying to help us is to stop personalization of power, so that we have institutions, we have check and balance, and all those good things. So without further ado, Judge Nyachae has lost a cousin, but he was gracious to say he wants to speak about the Constitution. We know the great work he's doing and the jurisprudence that is coming from the East African Court of Justice. We know that lawyers have now started getting keen interest on regional litigation, and one of the places to go for great jurisprudence and the interpretation is the East African Court of Justice. So Judge Nyachae, the friend of the Constitution and our friend, please come and address us. And after that, Professor PLO will also talk to us and will give you the other speakers. We are a family and friends of the Constitution. Feel at home. Pastor, thank you for starting us right. Reverend, thank you for the prayer. I feel it, and we are glad, and we don't take for granted that some of these have the spiritual assistance that God have given this country. So, Judge, karibu.
Thank you very much, Mwalimu. Good morning, everybody. What I propose to do, and I hope in doing that I will have met Dr. Ojwang's expectations when he invited me, is just in a few minutes, like 5 minutes, just a couple of reflections which I hope will either provoke or contribute towards the conversation that that we will have as regards the Constitution of Kenya 2010. Let me, and then at some point, you will see me sneak out quietly. It's my nephew, my sister's son, who passed away, and we have a funeral service. So around 9:30 or thereabouts, please understand if I sneak away. Let me begin my remarks, first of all, by appreciating everybody who is here, who in one way or another, as a stakeholder, has contributed to where we are at in a positive sense as regards the implementation of the 2010 Constitution. And of course, there are several people here who contributed in a huge way over a period of many years to the actual realization of that Constitution. Some of the people here, at one point or another, we were in the trenches together, so to speak, leading up to the realization of the 2010 Constitution. And it's always very encouraging when I see the consistency and commitment of many of the people here and many of the people who are not at this particular moment here with us. So I am appreciating those who are here, and I am appreciating those who are not here but have remained consistent in their affirmation and support for the Constitution of Kenya 2010. Let me, because I'm sure my friend Dr. Ojwang, the main reason that he has asked me to speak is because I was privileged, along with 8 other Kenyans, we were privileged to be the people who took up the mandate which is provided for in the transitional provisions of the Constitution to oversee, to implement and to coordinate the implementation of the 2010 Constitution. That is the Commission for the Implementation of the Constitution, on which I served between 2010 and 2015. Let me go to the point at which we were exiting as CIC, when we were handing over to Parliament and to the people of Kenya our exit report. Put briefly, we stated that as regards the laws that were required to implement the Constitution of Kenya 2010, we felt that as a country we had done fairly well as regards the implementation of those laws. Some are still problematic even up to today. That is 11 years after the promulgation of the Constitution and 6 years after CSC terms expired. That is why, for example, you see the campaign financing legislation, election campaign financing legislation is still problematic. That is why you see the whole contemplated legislation around the gender issue, the not more than 2/3 gender issue that is required by the Constitution is still problematic. So, other than those, as far as the laws are concerned, we thought we did fairly well. Then there were the regulations that were mainly still outstanding to be carried out. But the area that we specifically stated in our exit report that as a country we had done very poorly was in the area where the Constitution required and contemplates the inculcation of a culture of constitutionalism within, amongst the people and amongst the institutions. Now, sadly, in my own observation, and that's why I thought I would start from there, sadly, in my own observation, on that particular failure of inculcating a culture of constitutionalism, I feel that we have gone from bad to worse. And in saying this, perhaps I may be provoking a conversation which would be a good thing. I think there are very many examples of, when I say we are going from bad to worse in terms of inculcating a culture of constitutionalism. And apart from the people that I have paid tribute to and appreciated, who have remained consistent in seeking to ensure that the spirit of the Constitution is carried out, somewhere along the line as a country, we seem to have dropped the ball. And those that are expected, in my view, in the Constitution, particularly after the exit of the transitional body of which I was a member to oversee the implementation of the Constitution, as a country, it's very unclear who actually is overseeing the implementation of the Constitution. For example, the parliamentary committee, which is a creature of the Constitution, the Committee on Implementation of the Constitution, CIOC, in the National Assembly, quite honestly, and with all due respect, I'm not sure that I can tell you what it does or what it has done since CIC left the scene. So that has left us as a country in a situation where actually nobody seems to take responsibility to ensure that the Constitution is implemented as contemplated. Before we exited as CIC, we gave our opinion and advice to both houses of parliament that we thought, but it's important to understand, and many of you will recall, that by the time our term was coming to an end, because of the nature of what we were required to do in overseeing the implementation of the Constitution, relations with the houses of parliament and to a certain extent the executive were not the most favorable. And we therefore said to both houses of parliament, look, this is our view. You may not be happy with the people who hold this office. And actually, even the people who hold this office as commissioners of CIC really do not feel that they would want to continue as such commissioners. But we do feel that you should exercise the power that is given to you by the Constitution and the transitional provisions to actually extend the term of the commission as a commission. Choose other commissioners, because you obviously don't like the current ones, but choose other commissioners because there is work still to be done. It is important that we have this body, that it continues to oversee, coordinate the implementation of the Constitution. To its credit, the Senate engaged us on that issue. You know, they called us and engaged us to try and understand what we were saying, because we were saying to both houses of parliament, if you don't want to extend the term of the institution called CIC, the next best thing you should do, in our view, is to ensure that you give, even if you give another body, even if it will not have the constitutional protection that CIC had, you give another body which will have at least some legislative protection, or you strengthen, for example, the Kenya Law Reform Commission, so there's a body that continues with this work. In my view, history will judge the National Assembly in particular very harshly, because they treated that issue with complete contempt. They did not respond. The CIC, the National Assembly did not even acknowledge the end-term report of CIC. And so we went home because our term expired. And in default, they not having addressed that issue, one would then have accepted that Parliament itself would take up the role of ensuring the implementation of the Constitution of Kenya 2010. Sad to say, this, in my view, has not happened. If you look at the last 6 years, it's difficult to see what Parliament has done to protect the Constitution, so that we have a scenario where, if you look at the three arms of government, and when I was at CIC, I always told the public that our job as CIC is not to implement the Constitution. That is done by government, the various arms of government, and I think this is what the framers of the Constitution had intended. Our job was to coordinate and to oversee that process. Now, when I look at the last few years, especially since CIC exited, I see a scenario where I can say, in my view, without hesitation, that both Parliament and the executive have failed to protect the Constitution of Kenya 2010. And this has huge consequences. It has huge consequences because when Parliament and the executive failed to protect the Constitution, over a period of time, Wanjiku begins to lose the confidence that she had in that Constitution in the early years after the promulgation of the Constitution of Kenya 2010. It actually horrifies me, because we have situations, for example, where the rule of law is violated and life goes on. And it's as if there's nobody, we are all helpless. And I'll give an example, and it's just an example. I think that I could give many other examples. This whole story, for example, where the Judicial Service Commission did its constitutional part in terms of nominating judges to be appointed. And the president sat on it for close to 3 years. There were even court decisions to the effect he continued to sit on it, and it had actually reached a stage by the time a couple of months back that the president was now deciding to appoint those judges, or most of them, and leave some out. We had reached a stage where it's like, as a country, we had accepted that fundamental violation of the Constitution, and life was continuing. Right now, we have a situation taking that same story where several judges who have been nominated were not appointed as is required and expected in the Constitution, and again life continues. That sort of thing, in my view, chips at the authority of the Constitution. And once we begin to accept that, once that it becomes almost accepted, as I say, that a particular institution, in the case of this example, the president, can choose when to obey the Constitution and when not to obey the Constitution, then I think we are in a very, very dangerous situation as a country, and that goes fundamentally to what the whole, essence of having a constitution that belongs to the people, that is an expression of the will of the people. Because then the point is lost that in the Constitution, the president, for example, exercises authority that is given on behalf of the sovereign people of Kenya. And that authority can only be to the extent and in the manner that is given by the people of Kenya. So if that authority is abused or is violated, and that becomes the way that we do things, then we, as I say, we are in a dangerous situation. And then, look at Parliament. Let's take the same example. Parliament summons and questions even the most mundane things that happen out there. But on a major constitutional issue like that, Parliament does not even question it. So I conclude, in my view, and I would say again without hesitation, that the faith that we still have in the Constitution of Kenya 2010 is there to a large extent because at least one arm of the government, and that is the judiciary, has, in my view, to a very high extent remained faithful in its mandate in exercise of the judicial authority that is given to it in the Constitution. So when I look at the issue that we are looking at here today of, is the Constitution just barking, or is the Constitution, can it bite? I want to commend the judiciary of the National Judiciary of Kenya, because I think it has demonstrated to a large extent that this Constitution bites. I'm not going to refer to any specific matters, because some of the matters that they have demonstrated that the Constitution bites are still live matters in court, but I still do commend them to that extent. Because when I look at the other two main arms of government, I like I say, I get worried. And I would want, and I am about to wind up, I would want to take this opportunity on the 11th anniversary of the promulgation of the Constitution of Kenya. I would want to take this opportunity in particular to urge the Parliament of Kenya, that is the two houses, to rise up to their constitutional responsibility in safeguarding and protecting the Constitution of Kenya 2010. As regards the executive, sadly in my view, but perhaps not surprisingly, we have gone from a situation where in the early years of the implementation of the Constitution, my friend P.O. Lumumba, professor, and I were involved in those processes. And at that time, we were dealing, and I'm talking about the executive mainly, we were dealing with an executive that, because of the way people had been used to doing their things under the former constitution, they were reluctant. But as we pushed, we seemed to make some progress. They may have been screaming all the way, but we seemed to be making some progress. There are areas where we tried, and even at that stage, we did not succeed, and I think we are paying the price up to today. I'm about to finish. I just want to give you an example of when we were writing the leadership and integrity legislation. My friend Professor Lumumba and I were in the room with the cabinet subcommittee because that was part of the process of finalizing that particular law. And the people, and I will not name them, who were in that room and who we were helping to understand the law, they took the view in the room, which is very different from the pronouncements that they make outside to the people. They took the view that we were overly zealous in terms of the laws that we were seeking for them to approve so that they go to Parliament. And we were asked this question, Prof, if you remember. The person who was chairing the meeting asked us, are you people making laws for angels or are you making laws for human beings? And I will never forget, Professor Lumumba said to the chair, he said, Mr. Chairman, from now henceforth we shall keep quiet because we are not adding value to this conversation. we will just listen to you. That was just anecdotal, but true. Let me finish by saying this. Those of us, however few we are, who still believe in the Constitution, and when I say few, I'm not talking about the people out there, I'm talking about the activists who still believe in the Constitution of Kenya 2010, we also need to, we've done well, but we also need to up our game for one simple reason in my view. Let Wanjiku not lose confidence in this Constitution completely. Because when that happens, and I've given you the examples of where people are chipping away at the Constitution, those who are against the Constitution will get more and more courageous. They will chip at it more and more. And, you know, we read things now. I was you know, discussing, we read things, people are talking about, you know, the extending the date of the elections. You know, people talk about fundamental constitutional provisions in the most casual manner imaginable. And believe me, and this is my last sentence, Pastor, believe me, if we do not have our game in terms of being more courageous to protect the Constitution, they will succeed. And why will they succeed? Because Wanjiku will have lost interest, and Wanjiku will have reached a stage where she's feeling, you know what, there's nothing they can do. These people will always do what they want. And that, if we allow that situation to take place, then all the work, all the energy, all the effort, all the sweat and tears over the years of the various players, stakeholders, which resulted in the Constitution of Kenya 2010, will have been put to waste. I thank you very much. Whichever way you are structuring this, I'll be around for another 45 minutes. Thank you. God bless you all.
Let me show you how to do standing ovation. You clap wild and then you rise. And let's try this. This is, so we clap for, we're not going to be high or whatever. Standing ovation, but from what I see on TV. You clap and then you rise, still doing what? Right. But how will we know when to rise? Let it be spontaneous. Okay, let's do standing ovation. Thank you. And we are really, thank you very much. Judge, thank you, Chair. You still are able to shed tears in the case of human right and constitution violation. We thank you. Our next speaker is, again, Professor Pielo Lumumba. Karibu, Prof, and speak to us.
Thank you very much, Charles, for setting the basis for my very brief intervention. First, I think it is important to acknowledge that 11 years on, we have a constitution which forms the basis of national discourse. And that, I think, is important because it defines the parameters within which the political class must operate even when they are unwilling to do so. And it's instructive that you prefaced your intervention by saying that part of the problem that we suffer from is what my good friend and teacher Okoth Ogendo wrote about in 1972, Constitutions Without Constitutionalism. And I think Yash Gai has also spoken to it when he talked about the fate of post-Berlin Wall constitutions, when he observed that Africa is a graveyard of beautifully written constitutions which are honored in breach. And that must be attributed to history, and I think that sense of history is something that we must give its pride of place. And when I talk about that history, I talk about recent history, and I talk about our history since we regained independence. It was instructive during the cases now known as the BBI, both in the High Court and in the Court of Appeal, that the amici curiae in their presentation talked about hyper-amendability. And that, I think, was very useful because most of us will remember that when we regained independence on the basis of what was then Act number 1968 of 1963, which was our independence constitution, between 1964 and 1969, the constitution has been dismembered so very fundamentally that it had to be reorganized and reissued as Act number 5 of 1969. And the aspects of it that were affected were the executive, the legislature, the judiciary, and the entire architecture of governance. And one saw that was undesirable, and between 1969 and 1988, we also saw the amendments that were undertaken. At that time, both politicians and legal scholars were able to argue that it was necessary to amend our constitutions in the manner that they were, because the post-colonial state was a state that was fragile, and therefore you needed a constitutional order that would undergird the heterogeneous nature of the post-colonial state. But then, and we were there now, that is very recent history. Charles will remember we were in the Council of the Law Society at that time in 1990, 1991, when we started this conversation that it was no longer tenable to have a constitutional architecture which frowned upon the people's right to participate in governance. Of course, there were pushbacks, and pushbacks will always be there. And we ended up with the processes that we are familiar with, the people-driven constitution, which was produced the CKRC draft, the Bomas draft, and then the Kilifi draft. Then we have the 2007-2008 post-election violence. And ultimately, and sometimes we say this deliberately, that the 2010 Constitution was in many ways a product of a ceasefire. And it is not lost on me that when we were at Boma, some people were saying that you cannot have a constitution in peacetime. They were doing the work of prophets without the gift. But ultimately we had a near civil war, which when I look at some of these politicians, and there is no shortage of them in this country, who speak with both sides of the mouth, forget that this constitution in many ways has succeeded in immunizing us against some of the problems that would have visited us but for the Constitution. And this is what makes me come to what Charles talked about, constitutionalism, the culture of living the Constitution, the culture of giving meaning to the letter and what is sometimes described as the spirit of the Constitution. I remember very vividly when we invited a team of Commonwealth lawyers to look at the state of the judiciary at that time, led by Professor George Kanyeihamba of Uganda. And they talked about the spirit of the Constitution, and I remember the then Chief Justice Bernard Chunga saying, "What spirit of the Constitution are you talking about? Experts for what? About what?" Some of you will remember those words of Bernard Chunga. But those were attempts at pushback. What we now see is that we have a document, in my view, which in many ways, if implemented in good faith, can address those historical problems that we had. Because number one, we argued when we were making the Constitution that we had an overbearing executive. This Constitution now creates for us an executive who is subject to constitutional dictates. But the question is, has the habits of old died, or old dogs don't learn new tricks? And recent history does appear to demonstrate that chronological age in and of itself is not sufficient to prevent people from behaving as if they were dinosaurs. Charles has given a few examples. We now live in a country where for every judicial decision there is an attempt at pushback. We have seen that in the appointments of the judges, which is now known for its notoriety. The president, in a manner that is reminiscent of cherry picking, picked out a few of the judges that he thought in his view were good, The rest have not been appointed. We have not been told why. There have been attempts at besmirching them by engaging in acts of criminality in the name of arrests without evidence. And we are doing nothing about it, and they are getting used to getting away with it. And that is how it begins, getting used to getting away with it. We now know that there is a decision of the judiciary which tells the president that you irregularly and unlawfully appointed 128 individuals to preside over parastatals. That has been poo-pooed, and he is getting used to getting away with it. They are continuing to earn salaries. We know that there is an office created called CAS. Chief Administrative Secretaries. We know that those individuals who occupy those offices occupy illegal offices and continue to earn salaries illegally. And he is getting used to getting away with it. But the beauty is, and this is the beauty of the Constitution, that the judiciary keeps on repeating it, which is a good thing, which tells us that post this administration, it is possible, and I think some of us will, to go against these individuals and to reclaim our money that they have been earning illegally. That is the beauty of this constitutional order. If you go into the area, the other arm of government that I see has been misbehaving is the judiciary. You remember we very deliberately, as the people of Kenya, suggested that parliamentarians should not be in charge of determining their own emoluments, and the Salaries Commission was created. We know that the legislature has ignored that, and they continue to give unto themselves salaries which are immoral. The Kenyan parliamentarian is the best paid in the world relative to our GDP. And we continue to see that. The beauty, once again, is that the judiciary is alive and well. And one can give many examples. We have also seen the unnecessary conflicts between the central government and the devolved units. But the beauty is we can now say with confidence that generally, if this constitution is implemented in good faith, there are many things that it can achieve. The second issue that I want to advert to is the question of how to deal with the teething problems of a constitution. Many of us present here are either constitutional scholars or constitutional practitioners, and those who are listening live on the basis of the dictates of the Constitution. To its credit, after the Constitution Implementation Commission had done his tour of duty, Parliament did in the year 2014 mandate the Auditor General to assess the working of the Constitution, and I did play a part as a reviewer of the work of the Auditor General's review. The Auditor General then was Mr. Ouko, and they looked at the working of the Constitution, which is a good thing. I think the Indians have done that previously, that you look at your Constitution and ask yourself certain fundamental questions. This Constitution has been serving us. What is the character of the executive that we have? Is it better than the one that we did away with? What is the character of the legislature? How has our devolution worked? How has the judiciary worked? How have the constitutional commissions worked? We renamed our police force, police service. Is it a service? Or the old habits have not died? We renamed our prisons correctional institutions. Are they better now? These are the questions that we ought to put on the table. We created the devolved units. Is service delivery better now? Or there are things that can be done? And I think that there is wisdom in asking ourselves those fundamental questions, if only to ensure that the Constitution improves the quality of our lives. Because this is the fundamental question. are Kenyans the better, the richer in their socio-economic and political and other ways? Are they the richer because of a new constitutional dispensation? This is the question. That is why we have constitutions. And which brings me to my last point, that as we celebrate 11 years of the promulgation of this constitution, we must remember that there are fifth columnists within our ranks. We must remember, if you allow me to use this term loosely, counter-revolutionaries within our ranks. And that they are within the political class. I will not name them, but I see them on a daily basis. Across the political divide, same ones. I saw them in 1980s when I was a student. I saw them in 1991 when I was in the Law Society. I saw them at the Bomas of Kenya. I continue to see them. These individuals allow me a little melodrama. We may have come out of the Egypt of the old constitution, but Egypt resides in them. And I want to tell you that as long as those individuals are alive and well and active in Kenyan politics, they will use all manner of stratagem to torpedo this constitution. It is in that light, and like Charles, who is a judge, I'll say it, it is in that light that I see the BBI, for example. The BBI is a latter-day attempt, a Trojan horse, cleverly, perhaps not too cleverly designed, to claw back the gains that had been made in certain critical areas of the Constitution. But it is clever by one half. Why clever by one half? It has sweeteners, so that when you look at it, you think there are new things. It tells you, for example, that we are going to increase allocation to the devolved unit to 35%. Nothing new. The Constitution now says a minimum of 15%, which means you don't need a constitutional amendment. Just take the functions and money will follow functions. It tells you, among other things in the sweeteners, not in a constitutional amendment, but it contains it nevertheless, that young boys and girls, when they become entrepreneurs, will get tax holidays. Nonsense on stilts. So there are many things that you can look at in that. The whole idea of the BBI is predicated upon political ambitions of a few individuals. Let's be truthful. And I say this very seriously because many constitutions in Africa have been destroyed because of the ambition of a few individuals. So it doesn't come in any clever way. It is a few individuals who tell you that if we are being told, among other things, that the reason why we need the BBI is that you have a president, you have a deputy president, you have a prime minister, you have a deputy prime minister, you have another deputy prime minister, then tribal leaders, let us call them by its name, will now have officers and their tribesmen will be happy. Surely, in the 21st century, if that argument were being articulated in the 14th century in Europe, I would have no problem with it. But in the 21st century in this country, you cannot be saying that when one of our ideas is to become a part of an East African community, which treaty says that we shall start with a common market and then move into political federation. We want to have such primordial ideas constitutionalized. We must not allow it. So on this occasion, it becomes necessary to be vigilant. My joy, and this is what I conclude with, my joy is that to its credit, the judiciary has become emboldened and is now standing up and staring down the political players, but they will not give up. The history teaches us that your typical African politicians of the Kenyan extraction is famous for its tenacity. They will use all manner of ways, appealing to ethnic emotions. They will appeal to other primordial instincts, use the institution or misuse the institution of parliament, and it's the duty of all of us who are here to raise our voices. I remember, I think it was in the case of Conway versus Rima, where it was said that amidst the clash of arms, the voice of the law must never be silent, even if it is not heard at its most eloquent. It is our duty to keep our voices alive and well, even if our voices are not heard at their most eloquent, so that history may say that at critical moments there were men and women who are warriors for truth and justice. And it is our duty to speak this truth without fear of favor and without fear of consequence, without being suicidal. It is a great day. Let us celebrate this Constitution and be prepared to guard it with our all. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That's amazing, amazing, amazing. This is getting very, very interesting. Thank you so much, Professor PLO Lumumba. It's just a joy to have you here and to hear those wonderful words. And Judge Nyachai, also very, very inspiring, very profound, wisdom there. And so before we wrap up on the debate on this commentary, we were calling them just commentaries or briefs. We would like to invite one more guest, and we're going to give you like 2.5 minutes. Let's invite Dr. Singoe to come and just give us a very brief commentary in 2.5 minutes. Thank you, sir. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Apostle Mwabiru, thank you very much for hosting us. Judge Nyachai, Professor Lumumba, esteemed colleagues, I'm extremely delighted to be here today to celebrate with you the 2010 Constitution. I think I want to start very briefly from the conversation or the talking down that SG Ogeto was making in his submissions before the Court of Appeal, his opening statement in relation especially to the use of Wikipedia as a source of a definition of popular initiative. A conversation that I think has continued when you look at the judgment or the opinion of Judge Okwengu in the Court of Appeal decision. In talking down or speaking down to sort of Wikipedia, what Ogeto was doing, in a sense, was looking down at the idea of common, of a global common as a source of legitimate knowledge. The whole idea of looking down upon common property, our commons or African commons, as worthy of protection or as worthy of fidelity. My engagements in the context of the Constitution really were focused precisely on some of those challenges. The challenge of protecting marginalized communities whose vision and whose version of property did not necessarily comport with the mainstream version, which is individualized property that is evidenced by way of title. And so what we were successful in doing through the 2010 Constitution is the recognition not only of the identity of marginalized communities and the embedding of their rights in the context of Article 56. But more than that, the recognition of their viewpoint in relation to land and property, in Article 63, the recognition of community land tenure. I want to submit, Judge Nyachai and Professor Lumumba and colleagues, that if there is a domain of the Constitution that continues to want for implementation, that continues to crave deep and sustained work, it is in this area of deconstructing our property relations, because it goes to the very heart of the livelihoods and the survival of our people and our communities, especially those who are most downtrodden. I say this because despite, notwithstanding the existence of these frameworks and these parameters, I think we have continued to witness over the last 11 years such flagrant violations of human rights, that these communities face. And I think we have all witnessed the gross levels and the indignified manner in which communities have been evicted. I don't have to go all the way to Emberwood Forest or to Mao Forest, but even right not far from here, in Kibra, in Mukuru kwa Robert, and Mukuru kwa Njenga, these are communities that continue to live in our country, but they continue to live as if the 2010 Constitution is not relevant to their lived reality. And so while we may and we should and we must extol the achievements that we have made thus far, I think there is still so much work to be done. And while we continue to celebrate what has been achieved, especially through our progressive judiciary, the kind of jurisprudence that has emerged, I think when you look at the jurisprudence in relation to land, I think you see actually a deep and concerning retrogression. I mean, if you study keenly the jurisprudence of the Supreme Court in the National Land Commission matter, when you compare that with the jurisprudence of the same, Supreme Court in, the re-speaker of the Senate matter, you can clearly see a dissonance and a reluctance, on the part of the judiciary to really engage, with these relations and to begin to use the transformative provisions of the Constitution to deconstruct our land and property relations. But because I've been given only a very short time, I want to end by saying that aside from what has been submitted very ably, I think the other issue that we must be concerned about is this whole idea of institutional capture. You envisioned, I call you the fathers of the 2010 Constitution, you envisioned the existence of independent commissions as carriers and protectors and safeguarders of our sovereignty, or the people's sovereignty. But regrettably, when you look at the performance of our commissions, very few of them, I must say, inspire confidence. I think today, it is so easy for human rights violations to be perpetrated, gross, massive violations of human rights to be, to be perpetrated without a word from the so-called National Commission on Human Rights, despite its robust mandate. Today, it is so easy for there to be a failure of gender justice, notwithstanding the existence of the Gender and Equality Commission. Today, land grabbing is alive and well by other means, notwithstanding a robust commission, the so-called National Land Commission. And so there is a lot of work that remains to be done. But I take courage and I take confidence in seeing ordinary citizens represented, I think more recently, by the person of Oluchier, whose advocacy before the High Court and the Court of Appeal, especially in the BBI matter, and especially touching on the question of presidential immunity, was so canvassed and dramatized before the entire nation. It is citizens like Oluchier who will remain vanguards and protectors of our constitutional order. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I really stand here to say thank you very much for the work that you do, the contribution you have made, and the work that you still have to do. Thank you very much, and God bless you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Singoei, for those very wonderful words and very brief indeed, and that's excellent. Now, we want to go into a different forum. We're going to have a panel discussion, but I really strongly feel that I want to give literally 60 seconds to one of the members here that represent, like the practical affairs of, governing this nation. That's no other than Dr. Ekuru Aukot. I'm giving you 60 seconds. So could you please run here? And I want you to greet these guys. And later on, we'll have you on the panel, so you can say more during the panel session. But could you kindly just 60 seconds, just one quick comment.
All right. Good morning, everyone. I think I'll just say this very briefly. First of all, that it's one thing to celebrate the Constitution, but it's also one thing to celebrate the people who participated in actually putting those thoughts. I'm not talking necessarily about the committee of experts or the CKRC, but I'm also talking about the people of Kenya, because the Constitution is actually the embodiment of the views of the people. And I will say that since I will be in the panel, I just want to say that, yes, we still have a lot of work to be done in this Constitution. And I totally agree with the previous speakers that one of the things we should be worried about is actually state capture. And I think until, in my honest opinion, that we change, I want to submit that when we're thinking about implementing the Constitution, we should also be worried about who is it that we have given the responsibility to implement that Constitution. And this is one of the reasons why I think in my frustrations, I decided, you know what, we need to change the leadership of this country. Because like Prof has said, and I'm sure this is not the right forum, some of those 7 individuals who have become total fixtures in the governance of our country also have total and zero respect for the Constitution and the laws of this country. So I don't want to say much. Thank you so much for coming in today. And I think this is the first time actually a group of individuals have come together since 27th of August 2010 to actually talk about celebrating the Constitution. The political leadership in this country does not care about this Constitution, and we must continue this struggle. I'll talk to you later. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to go into a break. By that I mean from a television point of view. We are live on TV, so there's something called a break. So we're going into a commercial break for a few minutes. When we come back, we'll come back to a panel, and this panel is going to be comprised, not compromised, 4 individuals who I'm going to name so that then they can start miking and getting prepared. That is Dr. Ekuru Aukot is going to be one of the panelists. We will also have on the panel Dr. Hamala. I guess that's the right way to say it. And then we also have Professor Mwimali on the panel and Dr. Linda Msumba on the panel. So the 4 of you kindly will prepare you, will mic you. So we have about 4 minutes. So we will just sit and wait and get back on this panel. You come to the chairs. And this session is going to be moderated by our TV, social media giant and absolutely very active gentleman called Gerard Bitok. And remember, we are live on Elevate TV. Some of you are not very familiar with Elevate TV. Elevate TV is, is a channel that we created last year. It's primarily a platform to champion the kingdom agenda, and we are a Christian-based and founded television station, but we have a focus on elevating the truth. And to the extent that this particular forum is elevating a truth that is of a national nature, that's how we are able to host you here. So, and when you watch Elevate TV, you will see that we don't just chant sermons, on Elevate TV, but we speak to a broad range of issues, and we are very candid. Bishop Mwabili here, for example, comes on the morning digest here. He brings politicians, he brings in other leaders, and so we also want to welcome you to join us in some of those morning programs, morning digest from 8:30 to 9:30. Please sign up, come in when you are free, and come and sit here, and let's talk to Kenyans, and let's elevate the truth and expand and grow and develop the kingdom lifestyle. So that's really what Elevate TV is about. We came live last year. Corona really pushed everyone to the dungeons, and the church almost lost its voice, but the church cannot lose its voice because we have Elevate TV and people of goodwill that want to make sure we keep the voice of the truth alive. So thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. To those of you that are watching, we're going into a short break. We'll come back here. We'll have the panel. Please keep sending us your comments. Please send us your comment on the numbers on the screen, 0719 666655. Please don't call, just send a text and a question or comment on that number. And then, of course, on the social media platform, whatever social media platform you are following us from, please write your comment there or your question to any of the panelists, and we'll read those and we interact with you, we'll engage. So please stay with us. I believe you're going to enjoy this. So we're going to a short break. God bless you.
Tushangilie Kenya, taifa letu tukufu, Kenya tunayoipenda, Kenya nchi tunayoipenda.
Twajivunia sana tukijiita wa Kenya, nchi yenye baraka, Kenya nchi yenye baraka.
Kenya is a nation. Nairobi is a nation that fights and eats and destroys its own.
People in Kenya are like Nigeria, where if they get money, they do well in promoting the kingdom of God first.
Wow.
Here,
yes,
people, when they got a little bit higher,
yeah,
or another car or another something,
yes,
then they don't want to talk to those people even who prayed for them.
Let us reclaim the divine destiny, the divine allocation of this city.
Grandpa, when I found the bird, I prayed, God, you made this poor little guy, so maybe you can help him out.
His heart isn't beating, Sarah, and Zed.
Then I saw God standing on the other side of the lake.
I always thought that you were kind of special.
You see him?
Who?
God.
You saw God and then brought a dead bird back to life.
No, I didn't. God did.
Where'd you get this?
I drew it when I came home tonight.
You drew this?
Yeah.
It just sounds like she has a healthy imagination to me.
She would never outright lie. My cat died last week. I was wondering if you could stop by and bring it back to life.
Mom, it really was God.
Sir, do you think you can help me walk again?
I don't know.
Could you say a prayer for me?
So, Tell me what this medical emergency is all about.
I moved my toes this morning.
I can't explain what happened in there. Severed nerves and spinal cord can't regenerate.
Mom?
Oh, my baby. I thought he was never supposed to walk again.
He wasn't.
It was Sarah.
Truth is, all you have to do is believe in God and pray to Him. He's listening.
This one is just sweeter than chocolate.
It's impossible. You're beginning to catch on.
Kids Entertainment.
I have the enemy in sight. 18 degrees by 4 degrees.
Inspiring moments.
In life's journey, there is that one defining moment.
I remember I touched them, they were still warm. And I just told them sorry.
Deep conversations on spiritual, political, and economic issues.
In 2017, you offered your candidacy for the President of the Republic of Kenya.
Top local gospel tunes. Youthful, engaging conversations.
The person who won me over to Christ, before I came to know he was a pastor, we already clicked, we already developed a very strong rapport.
Powerful live church services.
God was in the business of restoring apostles to the body of Christ.
Sister Talk.
Whatever works for you, do it.
A sister is a gift to the heart, a friend to the spirit, a golden thread to the meaning of life.
Even if the opposition is there, right, left, center, I have decided. Yes. This is the route that I am going to take.
On Sister Talk,
it is your responsibility to control your body.
We engage on social issues, life challenges, economic empowerment.
An empowered woman is a beautiful woman.
We share various experiences through humor.
Is the anniversary his or is it for both of you?
Godly and biblical values.
Character is formed by the knowledge of knowing Christ.
Let's walk the Dada journey together.
Mothering grace begins to flow in the church when the pastor's wife is given her place and is respected.
Sister Talk, Thursdays 8 to 9 p.m.
Your weekday mornings will never be the same again. It's dynamic.
Why is it that we have just a few faces that dominate our political landscape?
Politicians eat from politics, not even from representation.
All right.
It's interactive.
What discipline should we put for technology?
Technology is not the problem. The problem is control.
It's versatile.
How are we able to have leaders, you are outside there, and they help us say, hey, we still can do something in the house of God.
Identifying people's passions and asking them to be deployed where they are passionate about so that they are not struggling to say yes.
Elevate TV brings you Morning Digest.
Women in this country have a big role to make this nation go in the right direction without necessarily bashing the male.
Join us live every weekday morning between 8:30 to 9:30.
And as a church, we need them to ask ourselves, how do we get in to shift the culture of our nation?
We've been focused too much on one side that we've lost sight of what is happening on this other side.
Hosted by Gigi, Othniel Mwabili, Moses Miruri, Patrick Murithi, and Ann David. It's time for the church to speak on matters affecting the nation. Monday to Friday on Morning Digest, powered by Elevate TV.
There is no town, there is no city, there is no nation without fathers.
They went before us and set the stage of what we see in the gospel today.
It's immediately when I got saved.
Wow.
The Lord placed in my heart passion for souls.
They fought the battles and prepared the way.
They were told this miracle worker is here from Kenya. He has troubled so many churches in Kenya. Troubled. Be careful. Others said he's a false prophet, but the sick did not listen to that. They needed it.
What did they do that we are not doing?
We believed the word of God that it is true. I believe the word of God that by his stripes I was healed.
Do not fear, for you will not be ashamed.
The gospel then and the gospel now.
God says, do not be dismayed.
We didn't have the technical gospel that people have today. If you believe, bow your head, raise your hand, come forward. No. No. People just stood up and began to repent by themselves.
Wow.
Others crying on the floor, saying, save me, save me, save me.
Oh, Jesus.
Dressing the mantles.
Tushangilie Kenya, taifa letu tukufu, Kenya tunayoipenda, Kenya nchi tunayoipenda.
Twajivunia sana tukijiita wa Kenya, nchi yenye baraka, Kenya nchi yenye baraka.
A very, very good morning to you. It's a pleasure to have you again. It is the 27th of August 2021. Tarehe 27 mwezi wa 8 mwaka 2021. We are glad that you're joining us this morning, and we are coming back from a break that we've had earlier before. First of all, I want to appreciate our seniors who have come before us and given us a conversation, and also want to appreciate the viewers who have been watching us. Remember, we are live on Elevate TV, but on their social handles, and we also live on Elevate TV on the TV free to air, and we also live here on the Tackle Gerald B Talk, but on YouTube and on Facebook. And today, like we said, we are celebrating the Katiba 2010. It turns 11 officially today. The Katiba 2010 turns 11, so we are on a birthday kind of. So we're going to have a conversation. We've been having a conversation before we just joined in for the panel. We are now in the second session. We're going to have a discussion with the panel, and we're going to break down some of the issues that relates to Katiba 2010. I request, as usual, that when you join in, please like. When you like, we get to know that you're watching us, and that way, like, please share. When you share, you give someone else an opportunity to watch broadcast. Karibuni sana kwenye Sheria Wiki. We are coming live from the Kenya Cinema within the CBD. Elevate TV, we are live on those social media handles, and also live on free to air. And also we are live here on Gerald B Talk, but on YouTube and on Facebook. This is a tackle, and it begins now. Please like, share, and let us know where you're watching us. So we're going to have a discussion with our panel here. On my right hand, I'll start on the other end with Hamala. Good morning to you, sir.
Good morning.
It's a pleasure to have you. And we also have our regular on Sheria Wiki. He's always leading the team and the panel on Sheria Wiki every Friday. Dr. Ekuru Wakot, who is a chief, who was part of the architects of the Katiba 2010. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Bitok, and good morning, viewers.
Good to see you. I'll also go to the other end. I'll start with my brother. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
You've already been awarded a professorship, and I'm actually surrounded by all doctors. And I remember my brother was saying, I'm going to be the next doctor. Amen. Even a traditional doctor, an herbalist, is still a doctor. So you never know where I'll feature. But karibu sana. Again, it's a pleasure to have you. And also, you're going to have Daktari Musumba. Good to see you. Hope you're well.
Hello, viewers.
Good morning.
Thank you.
All right. So if you have any questions that you want us to get to discuss this morning, you can send us on our comment section on all the handles that we are on Elevate TV, Gerald B Talk, and also you can send an SMS number that you'll see on the screen. You can send a message, don't call. Send a message, then I'll be forwarded the questions. Then we can start having this discussion. Again, the Katiba 2010 is turning 11 officially. This is the first time that you're actually having a birthday party for the Katiba 2010. I don't know if it is informed on the threads that he has been able to experience this year, or it's only good luck, or we have it, and I hope you're going to keep the spirit. So we're going to have a discussion around Katiba 2010. What is it? What is Katiba, first of all? I think we need to start from there. Before we talk about anything else, let's talk about Constitution. Katiba ni nini? So I'll start with you, Daktari Ekuru. What is the Constitution?
Yeah, so maybe before we answer that question, it's important for viewers to know that there is really no perfect constitution anywhere in the world. Even if you put the best of brains, the best of views, it is a negotiated agreement. And so in that process of negotiation, sometimes you compromise. You can say, what can I live with, what can I live without? But what is most important that when you're writing a constitution is that those who are negotiating this agreement between the people and the state must be honest in their negotiation. And they must try as much as possible to put the views, the intentions of the people in that document. So before actually it is finalized, it is just an agreement, a contract, before it becomes the law. And that's why Prof. PLO Lumumba was speaking about the letter and the spirit of the Constitution. Sometimes when the letter is not too clear, you must go to the spirit. That's why people keep saying, what was in the mind of the drafters of this Constitution? So now, what is a Constitution? Basically, a Constitution is just a collection of laws and rules that must govern a country. It creates institutions, and then it apportions power to those institutions. And those institutions, in enforcing the Constitution, must work together, but for the people. So essentially, a Constitution creates at least 3 arms of government. The legislature, the one that makes our laws; the executive, the one that enforces our laws; and the judiciary, the one that interprets our laws. But they must all work together. But it also creates another now arm of government, an institution that's called the independent constitutional offices. That's why you have the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights, the National Land Commission, and all those. But whatever the case is, they must serve the people of Kenya, which is why you can see in our Constitution, we begin by saying that all sovereign power and authority emanates from the people. And they must exercise it directly or indirectly. So it's an acknowledgement that the Constitution is not for the political class, it's not for the leaders, it's for the people and it's for the country.
Okay. Asante sana. That is from you, Kuru.
But there are so many teachers of law here, including the professor.
I'm surrounded by all doctors in law, so I'm sure you're going to have a very good definition of the same. I want to come to you as well, Daktari. In your own interpretation, what is the Constitution? Very briefly, what is the Constitution?
Yes, okay. First, I'll introduce myself. I'm Charles Kamala. And the Constitution, my distinguished teacher, Professor PLO Lumumba, is here, so I must be faithful to quoting
you must be careful how you did
history. Yeah. So let me use an author called Jean-Jacques Rousseau, who wrote a book called The Social Contract. And Jean-Jacques Rousseau says that the social contract has 2 components. One is the contract between you and me as citizens. We don't yet have a government. Ordinary citizens must decide what kind of society they want to live in. What do we value? And having done that, we then constitute ourselves as a state. That is the lesser known constitution. That is where we talk of our values and our spirit. The second part, this is the constitution proper, the written constitution. Now, we establish what is called government. How are we to be governed? So that we can know how to change our rules, how to interpret our rules, how to enforce our rules. We employ servants as officers of the government who will then act on behalf of the people who existed before them. Us as ordinary citizens, Wanjiku, the sovereign. And that is where many would-be scholars, I could say, fall afoul because they restrict themselves to that second portion, which is the written constitution, and they become positivists. And they think that that written component precedes the values or the spirit, which existed before the written constitution. And therefore, the Constitution of Kenya contains its preamble and its national values, which are the pre-existing, primordial, constituent constitution of Wanjiku. And that is the part which cannot be changed without reverting back to the people. Then you come to the institutions which are going to serve the principles and the institutions like the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary, which are now established to protect the fundamental values of the people. So I just wanted to rope in the component that there are really 2 contracts within one, within the Constitution, and the written Constitution must be faithful to the sociological fact that we are a society which wants and has decided to live together as Kenyans.
All right. Dr. Linda Musumba, I'll start with you.
Yes.
What do you think is a constitution? I've also seen your students have come in here. They're saying they're waiting for you.
Oh dear.
What is the constitution?
That's a lot of pressure, Gerald. This is my first time on Tackle, and of course here at Elevate Church, and it's good to be able to share thoughts about the Constitution in the house of the Lord. Because this constitution is for, for everybody, whether you're a person of faith or not. But to your question, Gerald, my brothers have been able to bring out one perspective of the constitution, and I just want to be able to talk about the constitution at a practical level. At a practical and experiential level, the constitution is the reason why and all of us experience the constitution. There's nobody who doesn't experience it. It's the reason why in your ward, you see flyers and posters up requesting you to come and give your views about various laws that are being promulgated at the county level. It's the reason why we have counties, and it's the reason why we have national government. It's the reason why a principle like public participation, which was not a hallowed principle before the 2010 Constitution, is now a very integral component of what we do. So it's the reason why several legislations that have been made by Parliament or laws that have been passed have actually been thrown out because of the lack of public participation. So the Constitution is something that you experience because it is, when you walk out of your door or even while you're in your house, it determines a lot of your rights and obligations as well as a citizen. So there isn't a single person in Kenya who doesn't experience it. Your security, whether it's food security, whether it is the security of yourself, all these things are guided by the Constitution through the institutions that my brothers have been able to bring out that are responsible for ensuring that your citizenship as a Kenyan, you enjoy exactly everything that the Constitution provides.
All right, thank you. Professor Jack Mali, what do you think is the Constitution?
Perhaps what they have said, but just to add one more element to it, that the Constitution doesn't necessarily have to be the written document, but it is the values that underpin what is written in that document. You will find there are other countries like Israel, like the UK, New Zealand, they don't have a written document. That is not to say that they don't have a constitution. There are certain critical values that they uphold that are so important to the operationalization of the systems that Dr. Aukot and Dr. Hamal have mentioned, that it inheres as a constitution, not necessarily by having been written down. And if you look at our constitution of 2010, it actually acknowledges those values beyond what is written in the document. So for example, if you look, apart from the values that it enshrines, when it talks about human rights, it says it's not the Constitution that accords you those rights. It is just a recognition of principles that exist. So the Constitution is that entirety of those values that we want in our system. And number two, I want to point out that constitutions are also about limitation of exercise of state authority. It's not just establishment of institutions, but also limitation of the values or the powers that are exercised by those who are given those public authority. And that is the essence of now constitutionalism. We are giving you this power, but we also limit you because the real sovereign authority does not belong to you, it belongs to the people.
All right, as Dr. Gerald, now I'm a doctor by association, I've made a conclusion that the Constitution is a contract between the people and its leadership. I don't know if I've learned one. All right. So I'm now officially a doctor. The Constitution is a contract between you, we the people, and that's what the preamble says, we the people give ourselves this Constitution. I'm doing well. All right. Now, since we know what the Constitution is already, the question and the theme of the year is, or the theme of the day today is, should it bark or bite? Not that we know what it is. We know it's a dog, it's a bulldog, it's a bobble, whatever it is. Should it bark, just bark, or should it also bite? Ekuru, now that we know what it is, should it bark or also bite?
You know, it doesn't necessarily have to bite or even bark. It must serve us. Okay. You know, one of the geniuses of Kenya's Constitution, I will always say, is chapter 6, leadership and integrity. You know, one of the things that Kenyans reflected over a longer period of time is that one of the frailties of our society is the failure of leadership to serve us. that we don't have servant leadership. The same way pastor, we serve us by, dishing out to us the word of the good Lord. So Kenyans crafted chapter 6 and say, we want this type and character of leaders who must then, when we give them that public office, they must serve us. They must bring respect to that office. I think what we have now seen in these 11 years, yes, we've created these offices, but these offices don't seem to be serving us. Perhaps that's why they're just backing, because we have put the wrong people in charge of those offices. A constitution may not be worth even the paper it's written on if we don't breathe life into it. That's what Prof. PLO Lumumba was saying earlier. We must breathe life into this constitution, so that if you are talking about, say, the Bill of Rights, to what extent are the Bill of Rights, my rights being respected, my right to property? And so if we had the whole day, we probably walk Kenya towards all the 15 chapters, 17 chapters of the Constitution. But each of those chapters must mean something. For example, Kenyan said, let's create a chapter called Chapter 12, Public Finance. Then they started by saying, in that public finance, what are the principles of public finance? We must use our money prudently, so that the taxes we collect, we must put them into good roads, hospitals, schools. And that's when the Constitution then we should say, when somebody flouts that aspect of Chapter 12, for example, misusing public money, then the Constitution must punish that person. The law must punish that person. That's when we expect the Constitution to actually bite, call for accountability. That's why in Article 10, we're talking about national values and principles of governance. To what extent are those being implemented? Corruption, for example, when people are given money to say, I'm going to build you a road, I'm going to build you a hospital, but we don't see that hospital at the end of the day. But the Auditor General comes and audits you and says, Dr. Musumba, you have not done the road that you said. So by virtue of the Constitution, we must be able to punish you. Maybe we should now stay away from just calling it corruption. Let's call it theft of public money. And if it's theft of public money, then we take you through the rigors of the law and the Constitution, and we must see you end up in jail. That's when the Constitution must be biting. Otherwise, we keep on talking about it as, just corruption, then the Constitution is backing, but not biting.
Dr. Kamala, I think it's already backing. The fact that you're talking about it means it's already backing. The question is, as it back, should it continue backing, or it should also bite?
Gerald, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Gerald. And I want to again reiterate that it's not simply a contract between the governed and the people being governed. It is a contract first among the people being governed with each other. We don't have a government yet. And this, to realize that, think of colonialism when we inherited the Independence Constitution. At that level, you and me as Kenyans, or our forebearers, did not have an opportunity to have a referendum and to discuss among ourselves as Kenyans what kind of institutions and what kind of limitations do we want to give the government. The British colonialists bequeathed the people at Lancaster House and said, take this, the Westminster model, and go and govern people in rural areas and people who might not have been conscious of the debates going on at Lancaster House. 21st century constitutions are different. They have first been a rejection of alien or imposed governments, and there has been a discussion by Wanjiku, Atieno, Nafula, and everybody among ourselves first, and then we have said, look, we value rights, as Professor Mwimali has said, that can never be taken away from us. There can never be torture. There can never be disappearances. There can never be a denial of fair trial in Article 25. So those are fundamental, and we have sat down as Kenyans before we have decided who will lead us and how we will structure parliamentary or presidential system. We have also decided there must be public participation, representative government. It's a principle called no taxation without representation. So in the first place, we have said we are not going to give anybody our taxes, and people must account for these taxes. And you cannot take the taxes and increase your salaries without telling us how, without our mandate and without the people's representatives being in parliament. So that tells you have to have periodic elections. There must be rule of law, and that means everybody must be equal under the law. So once we have discussed and said this is the kind of lives we want to lead. This is a good society. This is how we want to end up. Then we say now, how shall we structure institutions to give us and to secure these rights that we have already given ourselves from our gods? So from that standpoint, now you can look at does the Constitution bark or bite? If our leaders and our representatives do not serve us well, we remove them from their positions and we surcharge them and they are held accountable. But that servant leadership, that orientation that our leaders are chosen by us to say a concluding point has best been illustrated in, let me say, France. Because France, 1789, ordinary merchants came out onto the streets, they removed the king and Antoinette, they beheaded them and said, this is a republic. It's a people's republic. There's no land that belongs exclusively to the king. Who gave it to them? Did they make it? And they took each other seriously and they gave themselves France as a republic. Now, as Kenyans and as Wanjiku, we are the defenders. And this constitution, we give it to ourselves. And then we periodically engage one of us to take a responsibility and serve for a period of time and come back to account. Now, once that perspective is taken to heart, then you can see the barking and the biting. It is us at the end of the day who will hold them accountable, and therefore they will act on delegated power. They can't simply come and change it. These are not your values, these are your values. We are the ones who told them in the first place, these are our values, defend them, or we will come after you.
All right, so it should bite. Okay? Daktari, Linda Masumba. Should it continue barking, or is time it started biting?
Thank
or do you think it's
Gerald.
already biting?
In my view, it must do both. And it must do both effectively. When a dog barks, it is letting you know, or it is telling you that it's conscious and aware that you are there. So at a level of barking, the Constitution must continue, and the persons who superintend the Constitution, who is our leadership as well as each one of us, we must continue to highlight those issues that need to be done or that must be done. Biting, when a dog bites you, it has let you know without equivocation that it has got you in its sight, and it is actually going to bring you to compliance. Because I don't think there's anybody who can be bitten by a dog and you continue to just, be like, be like there's nothing that has happened, yeah? So it must bite. So I want to just use the area in our country of resource allocation and resource disbursement to be able to highlight this issue of barking and biting. So there is nobody who doesn't know about the contention there has been between the national and county governments with respect to the issue of resource allocation. I think people will be aware of the discussions that there were in the Senate during the development of the Division of Revenue Allocation Bill and all those debates that took place that were very, very emotive. So to date, we are not satisfied with the 15% minimum that the Constitution has allocated for counties. But as was mentioned by our previous speakers, it's a minimum and it can be expanded. And hence the attempt by the promoters of the BBI bill to bring it to 35% and put it in law. But the question that everybody's asking, the 15% that is due to the counties, because as we speak today, it's just, I think, last week or this week that the National Treasury has released funds to the counties. This is like, a couple of months after the budget. We know last year as well, coming into this year, many counties did not receive the resources that they need to be able to do what they're supposed to do. And we know the functions of the counties. One of them is health, that has been fully devolved. Health on its own takes a lot of resources to be able to mount primary health care, as well as run surgeries and all those things. These are things we see in the press, and we experience them when we go to our health centers. Now, under the pandemic, we know that oxygen is an issue. Oxygen is an issue, and this is year 2 of the pandemic, and oxygen is still an issue. We know that people have to leave our rural areas to come to Nairobi for health care, on the oxygen, on the pandemic issue. So in terms of resource allocation, what about the agriculture field where farmers, constantly are talking about the money that they need to be able to, to do effective agriculture. And this is replicated in all sectors. So there's the resource allocation, number one, and then now the distribution. Look at, for example, the different vulnerable groups in our country that are identified in the Constitution? How much money has been set aside to enable programs that empower women, programs that empower persons with disability, programs that empower the youth, programs that empower the education sector? How much has been disbursed to each one of these? Because there's a constant complaint that money is not reaching where it should. Universities are running down because they keep complaining that they don't get the money that they're supposed to get either on time, or sometimes, of course, it has been diminishing as time goes by. So in terms of backing, the issues must continuously be profiled publicly and at the lowest level possible. In terms of biting, where things don't get done, it must bite, because if it doesn't bite, then we continuously slide into a morass, because the things that need to get done, for example, in our hospitals, don't get done. The things that need to get done in agriculture and all those sectors don't get done. So in my view, it's both. It must do both and do both effectively.
All right. Thank you.
Now, let me pay homage, especially to us, to those in this room who took part in the birthing of this constitution. Dr. Okot has said, it may not be the perfect constitution, but I want to say, nonetheless, it's a thoroughbred. It's a thoroughbred constitution. Work was put to it, and a good work was put to it. Professor Lumumba, you are part of that program. I want to pay homage to you. Now, if you talk about biting and backing, we are talking about a dog. In our situation, a thoroughbred dog, the Constitution. A thoroughbred dog must have 3 elements. Number one, it must know when to stay quiet. Number two, it must know when to bark. And number 3, it must know when to bite. These 3 elements are enshrined in the thoroughbred that is our Constitution. Now, there is need for biting. Let me start at the top level. Because when you see things are not going right, then there are mechanisms for biting. We go to the courts, we get those orders, we go to the streets, we enforce those orders, we tell the powers that be that what we want is for you to implement our charter. It's our charter, and therefore we have every right to enforce it. And the enforcement mechanisms, and I think by and large they're operating, especially from the judicial perspective. There is the time for backing. Professor Lumumba has said, these are people who would not hear. They are so immersed in power that you cannot just fight them out. And they have the machinery of government to do it. I remember, I think it was Mwangale during the inquest for after the death of JM, when they were presenting the report, he gave this analogy. He said, I think a rabbit was speaking to a rock, and the rock wasn't listening or wasn't responding. And it got to a period, he says, even if you do not respond, at least you've heard what we have said. I'm talking about what we call the nuisance value. It must get to a situation where we must also operate on a nuisance value. We will take you to court, you will violate or you will avoid implementing the court decisions, we'll hold you to account, we'll go out in the hills and speak to you. Even if you don't listen or even if you don't respond, you have heard. That is the second. Of course, I know the third element that I've talked about is what the government want to allude to. That these people from the civil society are noisemakers. That there are times things are happening well and they don't speak. They only see what is wrong. They don't see what is happening that is good. You see, a good dog doesn't bark when things are operating appropriately. So if they do their work properly, we are not going to bark. Or the Constitution ought not to bark. If they are not doing it properly and we see that they are not willing to do it, then we need to bite. But in between, sometimes we need to prompt them by just barking.
Okay.
Gerald, if I may.
Yes, Dr.
If I may, Gerald, I just wanted to point out an equivalence because our constitution borrows a lot from South Africa, of course, in its design. And I think, again, viewers will be aware of the process that has been going on in South Africa under the called the Zondo Commission, which has been inquiring into state capture in South Africa. Of course, you know, we celebrate the South African Constitution a lot, and just as an example of biting, that commission, of course, has been inquiring into various, you know, personalities, business entities, government entities, and no higher than, you know, the former president, Zuma, who, as you're aware, is now, of course, serving a jail term because of failing to appear before the commission. So in terms of biting, that serves as an example of the constitution biting.
Okay.
But and Gerald, I think maybe just to add on to that.
And because of time,
yes,
I think we have less than 20
There is
minutes.
also a collective responsibility to us Kenyans. You know, I think one of the things that I've really observed for the last 11 years, even before, is that we have surrendered our country to a tiny minority of individuals who have since acquired some sense of entitlement. So that even as we celebrate this constitution at its 11th year, and we expect this constitution to serve us, but we must also say, what is our responsibility as individuals? These people that we elect and expect to invoke powers in the constitution to serve us. So we must take individual responsibility and do something about it. And this is why, for me, I decided it's time to punguza mizigo, because when you look at the value, what value are we getting from representation, for example? And we say that we have got 416 elected and nominated individuals in this country. And using our constitution, they are costing us 37.5 billion annually. To what value? And we can ask many, many questions. So even as we expect the constitutions to back, even we, the people, must back alongside the constitution, because the constitution is ours and the constitution is us. And if we back together, I think we might catch them and bite them.
All right. So we all back, as the constitution 2010 backs, we also back along.
Yes.
Already.
Gerald,
yes, sir.
there's the point, that's a very good point that Dr. Musumba makes about it is legitimate to be able to borrow. It is legitimate to borrow
provisions from South Africa, from India, as a lot of is being discussed about. In a global context, there is no pure constitution which has emanated from the people exclusively. You borrow from the United States, their civil rights movement. You borrow from the ancestor constitutions, which is the UK. But you borrow intelligently and with reason and with justification. And that is why people's participation must be involved, so that they can be involved and see what fits for our environment and what does not. And most importantly, in terms of sorry, in terms of who is the enemy that the constitution must bite, because when you say there's a dog and it is defending us,
yes,
the state is an artificial entity. It's not a human being like yourself and myself. It has a lot of power, a lot of resources. We are always likely to be victims. Ask what happened in Embu when 2 young men were in police custody. Ask what happened in, I believe, Kitengela. Some 4 young men found themselves in a river in Muranga. That is police power, that is state power being manifested, where it is, the constitution is being usurped, or excesses are being taken by people who have been entrusted but are exceeding. And then the constitution comes in to contain and to draw boundaries between people who have been entrusted with power, because the power is a public trust.
Yeah.
And people who abuse their trust then find themselves faced by the constitution. And the custodians of the constitution are the courts. And it was mentioned earlier that why has the Constitution Implementation Commission not been succeeded by an entity which could help enforce the constitution? Sad to say, we are all lawyers, the 4 of us sitting on
we are
the
all
podium.
doctors.
The Law Society of Kenya is a specialist organization which is able to, which has a public trust to be able to enforce the public interest. People tend to be self-interested and fight their own corner, looking, what is it for me? How can I make money from these jobs? Or how can I be appointed to a constitutional commission, even though that constitutional commission is not working? I want the job. But the Law Society of Kenya, and why we act on behalf of lay people, on behalf of third parties, why we get the privilege of being called learned friend or appearing on behalf of other people, is because we do not betray that trust. We are the ones to speak at the time when, and we have the perception to see the constitution being eroded, and unless we speak, it was said, because the Wanjiku will lose confidence in the constitution and say, let what happens happen, and the society will reach a stage of anarchy because nobody is backing on his behalf. So it starts with the lawyers and it starts with the courts. And that's what has happened in the BBI case. The Law Society of Kenya stood with Wanjiku, and that is how you had the constitution backing.
Okay, all right, we'll go to that. But you've had a recommendation from us doctors. As the constitution backs, we all back. So we form a choir of backing people. But I want to wonder, I don't know if our senior professor, P.L.O. Lumumba, counted and actually confirmed the teeth. That was also biting, we are confident that the dog will bite, because it might get to biting, then we realize, oh, kuna meno. Anyway, now on chapter 6 of the Constitution, you remember, I've remembered something. Yeah. I saw a video recently about an aspirant in Nandi County who is running for governorship. And you are saying that in his government, the citizens will not be complaining about the governor eating, because they'll all be eating. Every citizen in Nandi County will be getting 15,000 every month. So as the governor is eating, you are all eating. So the county is happy. If you are building roads, kila mtu ashike jembe, tunaenda kulima barabara. I don't know if that means chapter 6 of the Constitution, or if the doc actually foresaw such a victim of backing. But anyway, moving on quickly, guys, and because of time as well, I think we have less than 20 minutes that we're going to run on this conversation. I would want to know, I had our senior Charles Nyachae speaking about the Constitution. He was the chair of the people in implementing the Constitution. And he has said that our term expired as commissioners. And I would want to wonder, ladies and gentlemen, fellow doctors, is the Constitution an orphan?
Well,
very quickly.
First of all, I think the process of implementation of a constitution is supposed to be a continuous process. Okay. The CIC came in because we really intended CIC to superintend, especially the 5th schedule, to ensure that some of those laws, those acts that will operationalize. If you read our constitution keenly, and I hope all of you have read the constitution, even as we celebrate it, in almost every chapter where it is not exhaustive, you will say Parliament shall pass legislation to bring this chapter into effect. Okay? So initially we had wanted CIC, our intention then when we were doing the final constitution, was that CIC will then ensure that some of those laws are actually passed, so that then we can now talk about how do we go into the next phase of implementation. So let's not think that the implementation of the constitution stopped with the Nyachae Commission. You know, we expect Parliament to play its role, the Executive to play its role, the Wananchi to play their role. And you know, there is one aspect of this constitution that people actually forget. If you look at Article 104, the right to recall, this is really a power for the people. It's an aspect of implementing this constitution. When your member of parliament goes to parliament and anaanza kuzembea huko tu na kulalalala, ni jukumu yako kama mwananchi wa kawaida kusema huu mjumbe aniakilishi. So you begin to actually collect signatures to recall this person. But of course you know what parliamentarians did. Just like what they did to chapter 6.